I would like to thank the Institute of Southeast Asian Arts for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences in this festival. It is an honor to be part of distinguished guests and faculty members. Before I proceed, I would like to declare that I have no financial or conflict of interest to disclose in this presentation. The title of my presentation is Coping Strategies During the COVID-19 Pandemic, a post-quarantine reflection from a medical and artistic perspective. On the 22nd of January, Singapore confirmed its first case of COVID-19. Schools were still largely open and masks not worn in the public. By 11th March, WHO declared COVID-19 a pandemic, and social activities in Singapore were largely regulated. By 3rd of April, with a rising number of local cases, Singapore declared its first circuit breaker, leaving only essential businesses open. All school activities were shifted online. As a medical doctor, I was aware of how a pandemic can affect the educational system of any community. Prior to the circuit breaker announcement, I was already preparing for any eventuality that will result from a pandemic situation. The dance program circulated a memo on video recording of classes, as I was already practicing contingency measures in case classes were shifted online. Fortunately, most, if not all, my contextual modules were already in the learning management systems. I was already recording my sessions, writing scripts to transform my lectures into online discourses. At this time, everybody was already anxious. The fear was worsened by the cancellation of Crossings, the annual finale showcase of the dance program. I was choreographing that year for Crossings, and fortunately, the piece I was doing was a restaging. I was able to finish rehearsals early on, before the circuit breaker, and I had the opportunity to video record several full run-throughs preceding the lockdown. I created a movie using the footage from different phones, and I posted it on IG, hoping to palliate the graduating cohort's saddening plight. I did not want all our hard work wasted in vain. Somehow, the excitement of finding new ways to cope with this catastrophe had heightened my fight or flight response and made me prepare for ways to keep my life as normal as possible despite the dire predicament we were all in. What I was not prepared for was the seclusion that would follow. On the first week of the lockdown, my screen time increased by 50%. I was spending more time on social media poring over news about the health crisis. What made matters worse was that I could see the number of colleagues and junior medical frontliners who succumbed to the virus. These were the names of my professors, clerks whom I worked with. The closure of the gyms, coupled with the lack of physical activity, by being mostly at home, made me more aware of my slowing metabolism as I noticed that my waistline was slowly approaching my age. The number of steps I took in a day, according to my watch, was down to 60% what I normally clocked in. As a person who commuted daily, I would average 12,000 to 15,000 steps. Aside from the drop of activity, my regular daily dance face-to-face classes completely stopped, further reducing my physical activity. As a middle-aged man whose metabolism is approaching that of a sloth's, I knew I would be headed to illness if I did not adapt quickly to the situation I was suddenly placed in. Easier said than done. In response to the survival guilt I was experiencing from the loss of my colleagues and my kindred, I found a way to collaborate and write an article with my former classmates on dancing during the COVID-19 crisis. It's been more than a year since I penned that article with my co-author, and now I realize that after all the notes on sanitizing bodies and spaces to stave off the COVID infection, I devoted only a short paragraph on mental hygiene during the pandemic. This talk is then that addendum on mental well-being as our frontline defense to the pandemic. What is stress? According to the National Institute of Mental Health, stress is how the brain and body respond to any demand. The Cleveland Clinic further states that the normal reaction the body has when changes occur, resulting in physical, emotional, and intellectual responses, is stress. By this definition, we can see that stress is normal and is important in human growth and development. In dance and in sports, we have what we call the principle of progressive overload. It simply means that training dancer and athletes need to have gradually and consistently increasing challenges so that they become primed for the performance. This is why you seldom see the same two combinations in a dance class, repeated in the exact same way it was done the first time. The pandemic by itself was already a huge stressor for all, with half the classes going virtual and dance classes done at home via Zoom. Spatial constraints became an issue, and jumping exercises were altogether avoided as the floorings at home were not conducive to plyometric choreography. This becomes frustrating for both the students and the teacher, which adds to the stress of the situation. How do humans handle stress? We can equate stress as a form of threat to our survival. Our brain detects this threat through the amygdala, let's call her Princess Amygdala, and sends an SOS to the hypothalamus, which acts as the commander-in-chief that will order a cascade of events in a fight or flight response. Let's call him Commander Thali. Commander Thali calls on the autonomic nervous system that awakens the adrenal glands to release adrenaline. She's kind of the Wanda Maximoff of hormones. The adrenaline stimulates the heart to beat faster, the lungs to take more oxygen, and the brain more alert by using more oxygen, while at the same time, she allows glucose to be released as a source of energy in this emergent response. Once the stress is gone, Commander Thali down-regulates the response and everything returns to normal. All these responses and regulations happen very quickly, that we are rarely aware of them happening in the body. However, when the stressor persists, Commander Thali sends a signal that cascades down to the adrenal glands to release cortisol. Madame Corti, as we call her, keeps the body revved up to continuously respond to the perceived stress until the threat is resolved or gone. Now there is a problem here when the threat becomes chronic or when the stress is ever present in a person's life. Increased levels of cortisol in the body is associated with a rise in blood pressure, decreased human response, and a variety of diseases. Neuroplasticity. Events that cause a rise in our adrenaline are not bad per se. It is how we perceive them that matters. Example, when we are tasked to learn a new skill in dance, our bodies will respond the same way outlined previously until it adapts through the process of correct practice. Our brains have a wonderful ability to continuously change and adjust to its environment. This is neuroplasticity. According to Dr. Campbell, neuroplasticity refers to the physiological changes in the brain that happen as a result of our interactions with our environment, from the time the brain begins to develop in utero until the day we die. Neuroplasticity is stimulated by a chemical released in the brain called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This chemical stimulates the cells to grow, create new connections in the brain and the nerves as we learn new skills or adapt to life events. BDNF is important in our acquisition of knowledge and skills, and therefore in our survival. Think of it as brain fertilizer. BDNF production diminishes with old age. Hence, we see a decline in memory and skills in senescence. We see this in senile dementia, as well as other mental illnesses associated with old age. Whereas BDNF is important in neuroplasticity and therefore in human adaptability, cortisol has been seen to negatively affect the levels of BDNF. What does this mean? Continued or long-term stresses that remain unresolved will decrease the production of BDNF and therefore the brain's plasticity. When this happens, the individual will not be able to adapt well. With increased levels of cortisol comes hypertension, heart disease, and mental health problems. A recent study by Tao et al. States that multiple reports and meta-analysis have shown that patients with depression have lower blood BDNF levels. According to Bething and Das, decrease in the expression of BDNF is seen in many neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and Huntington's disease, and bipolar disorder. There is a clear relationship between BDNF levels and mental illness. However, a direct causal relationship between BDNF still needs further study. We still have to find out if depression causes the decrease in BDNF or if the decreased BDNF levels cause the depression. Whatever the result is, we know that neuroplasticity in our mental health patients is compromised, and that increasing levels of BDNF relieves depression and other mental health issues. So, how do we improve neuroplasticity? By increasing BDNF. And how do we do that? There are a variety of ways we can increase the expression of BDNF. I will summarize a few of them. Exercise. In a 2016 article, Dr. Slyman and her colleagues stated that exercise induces beneficial responses in the brain, which is accompanied by an increase in BDNF. Additionally, in a recent study by Arazi on 30 elderly men, concluded that there is no difference in the increase of BDNF levels between strength and endurance training. Any exercise, as long as you are able to enjoy it, can increase BDNF. However, there is increasing evidence that interval training such as HIIT and SIT and vigorous exercise, raising your heart rate up to 8% its maximum, promote higher levels of BDNF. Dancers will rejoice in hearing this. By default, we have increased levels of BDNF already. Number 2, good nutrition. Eat less high sugar foods and more plant-based and proteins rich in omega oils. It has been shown that carbohydrate restriction increased BDNF levels, and that certain foods such as green tea, caffeine, fermented foods, and certain probiotics increase BDNF. Dark chocolate and red wine in moderate amounts have also been shown to increase BDNF levels. There are also preliminary studies suggesting intermittent fasting can increase BDNF levels. Number 3, enough sleep. In a study published in 2019 by Hobara et al., individuals with short sleep duration, or those who sleep for less than 6 hours, had lower levels of BDNF compared to those who had 7 to 8 hours of sleep. It must be noted that most people suffering from anxiety or depression will have abnormal sleeping patterns, and that their BDNF levels will also be lower than normal. Also, growth hormone is secreted only in deep sleep, usually happening after 3 to 4 hours of turning in. Growth hormone is important for tissue healing and growth. Think of sleep as the cleaning time for the brain. In fact, it has been shown that the amyloid or brain dirt accumulates with sleep deprivation. Amyloid accumulation is implicated in Alzheimer's disease, which may cause depression in those afflicted. And in this disease, BDNF is very decreased. So, getting adequate sleep presents with a variety of benefits. Number 4, hang out. While maintaining safety measures, we can still have meaningful interactions with our families and friends, as opposed to those on social media. Dr. Salinas, in 2016, with a study of more than 3,000 participants, showed that people with greater social support had higher levels of BDNF. His studies further concluded that there is less incidence of dementia for people who enjoyed socializing regularly. A good social support definitely benefits our mental health. Number 5, somatic practice. Meditation, yoga, tai chi, and other somatic practices have been found to increase levels of BDNF. Gomat Butra and peers, in analyzing several studies on mindfulness and BDNF, found that these types of activities increased levels in participants. Somatic practice is a holistic physical activity imbued with mindfulness. It has added benefits of relaxation and recovery. So, even if you do not know these somatic techniques, a simple 1-minute breathing exercise while taking a short break from work can be beneficial. In dance, we dedicate 2 hours a week to a somatic practice. Number 6, enjoy the sun. As BDNF follows circadian patterns, its levels are highest in the daytime. This has been discovered as early as 2012 in a study by Molendich. Find a time in the day to be outdoors. Wear your sunblock if it's lunchtime. But aside from increasing BDNF, you will get your daily vitamin D, which is overall good for your bones and immunity. And lastly, learn a new skill. BDNF increases when we start to acquire new skills we enjoy learning. So take up social dancing, learn to play an instrument, start knitting. This can be stress-relieving activities that can make your days more productive. All of us in the performing arts suddenly learned how to edit videos and became more social media savvy by posting art performances online. So that's a plus for BDNF points. BDNF may not eliminate the cause of the stress, but performing activities that increase this growth protein will help us adapt to the stresses in our lives and make us more resilient to the challenges we will encounter in the future. Now that we know how BDNF and neuroplasticity work, how do we apply this to our classes? This is for the teachers. Make your classes more active. Play games. Gamifying your classes have the added benefit that the students will be able to remember the lessons better. Games involve emotional learning, and emotions are powerful tools for memory retention. It makes you and your students active at the same time. Number 2, allow for more socialized problem-based learning. PBL lets the students socialize with each other and learn new ideas from each other. Aside from providing a wider range of knowledge acquisition by learning from their peers, it encourages more meaningful relationships to form. Number 3, take your classes outdoors. In this pandemic, we found out that infection risk is higher indoors as our rooms are poorly ventilated. So we actually decrease infection risk, aside from getting benefits from the sunlight by going outdoors. Number 4, allow the students to practice skills even outside your lesson plan. While this, at first, may look disruptive, we can use it to our advantage by connecting their chosen skill to our current lesson for the day. It has an added benefit that such a skill set may be new to you as well, making yourself learn a new one. Lastly, end your classes with active reflection. Active reflection is an intentional, organized, and consistent effort to self-examine and discover connections between our learning experiences and the world around us. We can take this one step further to make it more meditative in character by allotting at least 3 minutes of our classes to allow students to be conscious of their breath, their weight, or their posture as they reimagine their learning journey in your class. We would have empowered our students to be more self-aware in their own methods in learning. Aside from the benefits of meditation and neuroplasticity, we would have encouraged them to understand for themselves what worked best and what needs improvement. This is different from us telling them what to do, but them finding out how to best acquire knowledge and skills and connect them to their personal values so that they bring these skills outside the academic milieu and apply them to their daily living. If you are a student navigating an arts course, you can apply the 7 ways you can increase your BDNF levels to your daily activities by remembering this phrase. Exercise and eat healthily outdoors with your loved ones. Then meditate at home to get your 8 hours of sleep. Of course, all these suggestions would sound ideal on presentation, but implementing these changes to our pedagogic methods in the name of mental health will take more community discussions, as it will require time, lesson plan changes, and effective classroom management in its implementation. But once we have these humanistic and biological principles underpin our practice, and we consistently remind ourselves of these concepts in planning our syllabus, it will become second nature to us, like any habit we form, especially in the arts, where creativity is essential, not just to survive, but to thrive. Focusing on mental wellness to stimulate creativity can very well make or break an aspiring artist. Caveat though, the activities presented here are not panacea to anxiety or depression. Far from it. If you have a student or suspect anybody who may be suffering from mental illness, advise that person to consult professional help, either through counseling or by seeing a psychiatrist. It is good to have some sort of stress thermometer so you can gauge your own stress levels and those of the people you are with. However, layman knowledge may not be enough to alleviate the symptoms of pathological mental illness. What we can do as teachers is simply to create an environment that will encourage them to adapt to the challenges of the vocation that they have chosen so that they may learn from them. I began this presentation by narrating what we did in response to the COVID-19 crisis. On hindsight, I realized that whatever processes we went through built our resilience, and this is the product of neuroplasticity. How we adapt, how we survive through this pandemic. In the end, we know we can rise above these challenges and increase our BDNF and neuroplasticity by following the advice that was given previously. I finished writing this script on the last day of my 3-week quarantine. The stress of solitude was both boon and bane for me. It made me more creative while remaining active in such limited space, even if I was always anxious with my rising cholesterol levels and decline in physical activity. I've watched inspiring Netflix documentaries that made me rethink of my pedagogic processes, hence this presentation. With all of these advice in encouraging the adaptability of our students and mentors, we must always remember that the 3 most valuable pedagogic concepts this pandemic has taught us are holistic learning, values, and empathy. All of these may seem like common sense to practice, but these activities should not be a one-off event in our lives. They must be sustainable and consistent so that we practice wellness daily in our lives. After all, our mental health should outlive this pandemic. Thank you very much, and take care all.